It says we're live. Maybe it's actually true. Hurrah! There we go. Welcome to the Squirrel Squadron. Nice to see and hear all of you. Well, actually, I'm not going to hear you, but I hope to hear you in the comments. We had a very nice response to signups for this event. And this is, of course, my free live stream on juniors to seniors overnight. So how do you find and promote the people within your organization who can make miracles happen by going from being very junior, very inexperienced folks, maybe not having the experience you expect them to have, and suddenly taking significant managerial, significant technical responsibility within your organization? And I have several examples of folks who have done that in my career, helping lots and lots of companies, over 300 now, around the world over the last decade or so. So I'm Squirrel. Welcome to the Squirrel Squadron. Nice to have you here. I hope you found the place you expected to be. Now, I had an interesting group of people respond, which I didn't quite think of, because I was targeting, as we usually do in the squadron, more executive type folks, people who are at the top of the organization saying, where are my hidden talents? Where are the people who can jump up and be greater leaders? And they'll be nice and less expensive, and they'll be fresh eyes, and they'll be a great asset to my organization. And if you're one of those, you came to the right place. This is what I was thinking. But we also had a bunch of folks come along and say, hey, I might be one of those people. I'd like to do that jump. I'd like to move quickly up in my organization and have more responsibility. That's very sensible. So if you're one of those people, excellent. I will try to give you some tips. One thing I will say to those folks is you have to have some innate capability and some luck. So I don't want to say I have the magic formula for you to go from an entry-level person in your organization to the CEO. If I knew that, I would charge an awful lot more than the free that I'm charging you for this live stream and the fairly high fees I already charge to my clients. So I don't have magic like that can do that for anyone. But what I do have is some experience that suggests some pointers for the type of person who can make a leap of a significance and really change their career and their organization, and how to recognize those folks. Those of you who would like to be such a person, well, maybe you can try to encourage some of those characteristics in yourself. I'm not sure that we can all adjust ourselves quite that way. It's not like Dungeons and Dragons, right? You can turn up your wisdom and turn down your constitution. You can't do that in real life. But let's see what we can find. I should say, by the way, that I would love for you to comment in the comments section. I can see all of your comments, and I love responding. I especially like it when people disagree with me. So if you think I'm a real idiot and you're laughing at me or throwing tomatoes at the screen, throw them virtually. Let me see that in the comments, because I'm very interested. If you're there and you're in one of those two categories, or maybe you're a different category, the one that I didn't realize. If you're in one of those, please comment now and just let me know what brought you here. So are you interested in being one of those people who makes a leap? Are you interested in finding people like that in your organization? Maybe you're both. I'm interested in tuning this to your needs. We also have a bunch of questions that people submitted ahead of time, so I'll deal with those as well. So ask questions all the way through. Comment now to let me know what's important to you so I can tune this to your interests. And I'm going to go with some of my fun stories. Laura has something. Laura, our community manager, takes care of everything. She's reminding me that she has some bits about the squadron that she's going to scroll across the screen there. Thank you, Laura. These are things that are coming up and things we're discussing on the forum. So we're going to talk next week, 2 weeks from now, in another event like this, a Zoom call, about how to hire people at the executive level. How do you actually hire those people? Okay, I didn't necessarily find somebody in my organization, but I want to bring someone in. I want to hire someone. How do I find them? How do I test them? How do I check that they're the right person? I do a lot of helping people with that. We might have a special guest for that one, so not sure if that's going to come off, but I need to track him down and see if he's available at that time. We're also talking about all kinds of interesting things in the Squirrel Squadron forum, which is where 3,000 executives from around the world are always discussing all kinds of interesting and provocative topics. So you can see some of those scrolling across the board at the bottom of the screen. 20.8% is one of those. That's the percentage of hours in the week out of total number of hours. So there's 40 hours that people normally work and 192 hours in a week. And guess what? There's no sort of magic special characteristic that has. And so I commented on that, and we had a little discussion about, should people be working 4-day weeks? Should they be working 3-day weeks? Would we be more productive if we did those kinds of things? If we sort of lost the cachet or the special place of the 40-hour week? So we're discussing those kinds of things, how technology might change that, how AI might change that. Those are the things we discuss in the Squadron forum. So if you're interested in any of that stuff, go to squirrelsquadron.com, which is down there somewhere. And we'd love to see you there. Free and open to everyone. It's my way of giving back. By the way, if you want to know about me, there's lots there about me. I'm a consultant, been working with folks in all kinds of industries, but mainly technology for the last 10, 11 years now. I've even lost count. And the main thing I do is help people make their tech teams insanely profitable. So let's talk now about how to get those people within your organization who have the special skills, who have the special talents, the special ability, or have developed those abilities to make that leap, to go quite a number of levels up and suddenly operate in a new way. And I have a bunch of different stories to tell about that. And I might not get to all of them. We'll put them on the forum if I don't get to everything. So the first thing that I want to point out is actually from the world of music. And in the world of music, for a very long time, there were tremendous biases. And people could kind of tell that there were biases because if you look at the people who were coming to, and I mean, by the way, classical music, I mean symphonic music, people are doing concertos and operas and things like that. So if you were going to be a solo performer in an orchestra or with an orchestra, you would often have to audition, and you would audition to be the first chair or the second chair in the violin section and so on. There were different ways that you would audition to have different positions within the orchestra or playing with the orchestra. And what happened, of course, is that people noticed by looking around that everyone kind of looked like me. They were kind of my color of skin. They were my gender. They were they kind of looked like this dominant group. But that wasn't really fair, it didn't seem, because there would be people who would be playing the violin or singing or playing the flute much better, but they would never seem to make it through the audition. And of course, no one ever had any reason. It's like, oh, your skin color isn't quite right, or, you know, I don't quite like your color of hair. But something must have been happening because statistically, there was just way too much dominance of a certain type of person. So then somebody had a really brilliant idea. I don't know who had it or where it came from, but they had the idea that maybe you could put up a barrier between the people who were listening and the person who was performing. Because, in fact, as long as there was enough air around for the sound to travel, having the wall in the way only prevented you from seeing the person. And you don't need to see someone to tell if they perform well. So they began having these blind auditions, and now I think it's the norm for orchestras and conductors and so on to audition people blind in this way. And guess what? Suddenly we have parity. We have lots more people who have different color skin and different gender and different color hair and lots of other things. And it's a much more equal environment because there's some blinding factor. There's something that allows people to pay attention to the performance of the person rather than the ancillary characteristics. Now, it's amazing how much those characteristics make a big difference in promotion and hiring and bringing people up to higher levels in the organization. I certainly have said this myself. You know, what we need is some gray beards around here. I remember saying that to my co-author who helped me write Agile Conversations. And Jeffrey said, well, you know, I just grew a beard and there's some gray in there. So, you know, I'm a gray beard. Well, that's true. But, you know, there are other sorts of people who might be profitable and valuable to have in my organization. Jeffrey was wonderful to hire, but there are other people I should have been considering. And so often, simply because someone is relatively new to your organization, or they're relatively young, or they don't have experience in the field that is of the depth that some people expect them to have, they can be passed over and ignored. And so a really good example of this that I have to obscure a little bit, it's a client of mine. All these folks are members of the squadron, by the way. So if you want to meet them, just write me and say, hey, I'd like to meet that person who was in your story. So this person was just meeting me last week and considering some coaching with me in addition to what I'm doing in the organization and so on. And this person told me the story of how they got to be at their level in their financial services organization. And the way they got there, I'm obscuring a lot about this person and exactly what they do, but they're doing trading of the kind that you see in Wolf of Wall Street and all those kinds of things. All that stuff's true, by the way. I used to work in the city and I got phones thrown at me and I know exactly what that's like. So this person was in that kind of environment. And this person was working in a big trading floor with lots of different people who are all managing money and trying to make money from it. And guess what? There was an objective measure, which is how much money you made in the market. And of course, some people would invest in cryptocurrency, for example. This was way before that, but the equivalent in whatever year it was. And they'd invest in pineapple futures or something. And guess what? That didn't do very well, and they lost a lot of money. So if you imagine them behind a screen, like in the music example, they were performing poorly. They were playing the wrong notes, and had bad tone, and just didn't sound very good. And so those folks got booted out. So there's this big floor full of people, and it got smaller, and then it got smaller still. And this person kept surviving all of those cuts because this person was making a lot of money, was making good bets, was figuring out where the market was going, and had a very strong track record in their particular environment. So because there was an objective measure for this person, and in finance, sometimes this is what matters. Lots of examples where it doesn't. You can watch those movies to see how biased people often are, and how much they fool themselves. But in this case, in particular, this person's results were so strong, despite the fact that this person was relatively young, didn't have a lot of experience, didn't necessarily have all the external attributes that you would associate with someone being tremendously successful. This person was successful, and there was a objective measure that could help everybody understand that. So this person moved ahead, lots more people invested, and now this person has a tremendous empire of trading and is doing extremely well. Actually, one of this person's biggest problems is making sure that there's enough time to do trading and doesn't get distracted by other stuff. That's one thing I'd like to help with. So the point I'm making here is that if you want to identify people like this, if you have an objective measure, now in lots of cases there isn't one. Entertainingly, software is one of them where there's usually not an objective measure. I can say more about that if people are interested. But places like music, places like financial trading, other environments in which there's some kind of absolute measure of value and productivity and effectiveness, well, you want to look for the people who are scoring well. It's surprising. That would seem obvious, but go walk into any bank and you'll find an awful lot of folks who you're not quite sure how they got to that position, because they definitely aren't making a lot of money for the bank. If you pick any major global investment bank, and you'll find plenty of those folks walking the floors. How did they get there? I don't want to go into it, but probably not by excelling in making money and trading really well, as this person happened to. And this person happened to be in an environment where that was rewarded and it was easily visible, and this person could capitalize on that. So that's the first thing that I'd suggest you do, is look around for any kind of objective measure. Now, I'm just going to return to the software example for just a moment, because I know a lot of you are interested in software, given my background there. Not everyone, but some of you will be. The problem with software is you would think there would be a very clear objective determination. Does this person write more lines of code than someone else? Does this person write code that has fewer bugs? Does this person write software that is more conformant to some kind of standard? I wish there were a way to measure effectiveness of engineers that way. There just isn't. And the reason is very simple, that we're building extremely complex systems, ones that nobody's ever built before. And so there aren't kind of standards that we can look at and say, well, definitely this person is better. But there are lots of places where that's true. Sales is one that really comes to mind, because people earn commissions, and they earn commissions based on how much they sell. And how much they sell is a clear number that's captured in a whole bunch of contracts and customer relationship management systems and things like that. So what you'll often find is there's star salespeople within the organization. Maybe they're not getting as great opportunities, but if you look at where they're working, they might be working in a quiet area of your organization, one that isn't making as much money, but they really stand out. All of their colleagues are at this level in that part of the organization, and they're up here. Well, if that's happening, then you want to double down on that. You want to bring them out and see if you can do more with them. You would think that would be obvious. You would think that everyone would do that. I can tell you, I talk to lots of organizations that have outlier performers, people doing much, much better than everyone else, who are not being rewarded. And we could go into in depth exactly why that happens and where it comes from, if anybody's interested. But let me start with that one, which is, if you can set up any kind of blind audition, some metric that tells you where are the tall poppies, where are the people doing better than everyone else, You want to nurture those. You want to find more to do with them. I can't resist it. There's one particular reason that people often don't pay enough attention to those folks. They're trying to bring everybody else up. And they say, oh, yeah, here's a poor performer. Let's see if I can raise them. I mean, this person's probably okay. They don't need my help. No, that's backwards. You want to spend most of your time helping the top performers and helping them be even better and helping them to move up in the organization and get more responsibility and more output. And your low performers, don't spend so much time with them. Probably should fire them. Okay, so that's not our topic today, but I'd love to wax prolific on that one at another time. Okay, so that's my first story, is the person in financial services who got tremendous rewards from an objective measure, namely how much money they could make from trading in the market. And that objective measure made it clear who should be invested in, who should get more share of the pie, and that's how that person moved ahead. And it was tremendously valuable for their investors and themselves and everyone else. Now, here's another completely different example. So in my travels, I got to work with a young man who originally started as a customer of the software that my team and I were building, whose audience was 8-year-olds. And he was about 8, maybe 9, and he was prolific. He'd started 2 businesses. He was 9, had 2 businesses. They were like trading cards, and one of them was setting up servers and sort of reselling them and so on. They were very small businesses. He was running them from his bedroom, when he didn't have homework. But he's just a brilliant kid. And so, any blind audition would certainly have picked him up. But the main thing about him was how humble he was. So he didn't think this was extraordinary. Everyone around him, it was a financial service. We were a debit card for kids, and he's funding his businesses on our card. Right? Most kids are like buying ice cream, right? And this kid is off running businesses. And this kid is very unusual, really interesting. Had a wonderful time talking to him. And I got to know him, and I followed his career. He was also a programmer. He really enjoyed writing software. He was learning about how to do that, doing that a lot before most kids learn, of course. And, very, very interesting young man. A few years later, I was working with a client, and that client was really looking for bright software developers. And they said, we'll do anything. We need people who are really capable. We can train them in anything they need to know. We just need the brightest possible people. And this kid was now 13. And he came to me and he said, Squirrel, do you know anybody who would, pay me lunch money to come and work with them? Because I really want to work in software. And I said, well, these guys over here, they said they want somebody brilliant. You're brilliant, that I know. You happen to be 13. I don't know if they can hire you. Well, he went and researched the child labor laws. And he figured out what you're allowed to do and when you have to have breaks and how many hours you can work and so on. And he came to them with a proposal, and they paid him a lot more than lunch money, I can tell you, because he was an absolutely brilliant coder. And so he moved from, a typical summer job, mowing lawns or something, to a significant coding opportunity, writing software for this financial services company. Excuse me, and did an absolutely brilliant job for them for the summer. They wanted him to come back and become a permanent employee. Couldn't quite figure out how to do that during the school year, right? That doesn't work out so well. Last I heard, he was enjoying a great career at either Oxford or Cambridge, can't remember which, really taking off and becoming a very successful in academia, and I'm sure elsewhere he's going to do very well. Now, the way to identify this person, if you have, no, you probably don't have any 13-year-olds in your organization. If you do, that's itself very unusual and certainly a signal that you might be able to move them up quickly. But the thing that was really noticeable about him was that he didn't think he was unusual. He didn't put himself forward. He didn't say, I'm an amazing kid, you should hire me. He just said, would anybody be interested? I kind of do some fun stuff, and I'd like to do things for you. It means that the kind of people that you can move in this way may not show themselves. They may be quite quiet, they might be humble, they might be introverted, but their actual output is going to be very significant. But there may be nobody trumpeting that. There may be nobody coming along and saying, hey, actually, this person's scoring very highly. This person was started with this very small project, but built it into this much more successful one. These folks aren't necessarily going to show themselves, so you have to go look for them. And I was lucky enough to know this young man. And I was looking around anywhere I could find brilliant software developers for this company. And they said, we'll hire anyone, anywhere in the world, any characteristic. They weren't thinking of 13-year-old kids, But they once I told them about him, and he'd done all this research, and he came in and impressed them with his coding, he was able to move very high very quickly from his original position outside the company. So that's another example. So far we've got some kind of blind audition, something that tells you objectively that the person is doing well, and a certain amount of humbleness. Because the other thing that's going to happen to this person has to have low ego. This can't be a person who is very pushy and forceful, because they're going to turn off a lot of folks who are going to be resentful. Now, it happened in this company. There was a very positive culture. A 13-year-old kid writing code was new and exciting and interesting, and people were welcoming and teaching him stuff, and they had a great time. He was really energizing for the team. That was lucky. In a lot of cases, somebody that move up like this is going to encounter prejudice and opposition and a lot of difficulty. And if they're sensitive to that, if they're sort of pushy and aggressive in their approach, that's not going to work very well as you move them up very quickly in your organization. So far we've identified this sort of objective measure and humbleness. Those are two characteristics that I'd be looking for someone that I might move up in this way. Now, I want to say a little bit, I have a few more examples, but I want to say more about sort of how you move this person. So in both these cases, there was sort of a natural path. There was a way this person could move forward. And in one case, there were jobs open, so the young man could go there. In the other case, there was investment available. So people moved more investment to the person who was making a lot of money, very natural. And so these people were kind of going through the front door. You often have to help somebody like this through the side door. You have to help them in not a traditional or obvious way. And I'm going to tell a story about somebody who went through the side door in a minute. But let me illustrate one very nice side door. And that is holidays. Now, some of you might have noticed we're coming up to summer. Here in Europe, we take lots of long holidays, and people disappear. In Central Europe, they seem to disappear for the entire month of August. I'm not sure if that's really true. But when people take holiday, the business keeps running. Well, gosh, I wonder who could take over for someone who is doing okay in a more senior role, while someone is, while that person is enjoying their nice holiday on the French Riviera or on the beach somewhere or whatever it is. Well, how about that person who's very humble, is scoring very highly, but is quite junior, really isn't known well, doesn't have a lot of reputation or experience? That's a great person to try. And I'm often counseling my coaching clients when they're saying, look, I want to hire internally. I want to promote people. I want to try them. I say, hey, it's about to be the holidays. Who could you put in a position temporarily? Because that has lots of benefits. First of all, you get to see them. It's kind of like a blind audition. Not quite blind, but it gives you some objective measure. And you can say, my God, this person did in 3 weeks what somebody else would take 3 months to do. This is really a promising person who has lots of good characteristics. And another thing that can happen is that the person doesn't perform so well, and they really struggle. They have difficulty. They're not really ready for this for one or another reason. I'm going to talk a little bit more in a minute about some characteristics to look for to be successful. I already mentioned humbleness. Maybe this person is a little less humble. Maybe this person has a little less emotional maturity. And you find that out, and it's safe, because someone's, whoever it is they were replacing has gone away for 2-3 weeks. This person is taken over for a bit. They can't do too much damage in that time. And if they're not quite ready, you just say, great, thanks for your service, very helpful. Now so-and-so will take over again. However, if they perform really well, what you can say is, I got something new for the person who went on holiday. They can go over here and do this other thing, which is great, success for them. Good, congratulations, everybody applaud. And this person who was doing it while they were on holiday, man, they're really great. They're going to keep doing it. So just keep doing what you were doing and do even more of it. And there you are. So you have two nice paths there, both of which are very comfortable. And it's a good way to try somebody out to see if they're going to be able to perform at the higher level. Now, that's a kind of side door approach. Let me give you another even more egregious side door example. And this is someone, I think it's the most entertaining, outrageous story I know about someone's career path. This person started, again, I'm going to obscure a little bit. I don't have his permission to tell you the full story. But this person started in the National Rail Service of Britain. And where he started was doing a particular job. And you can imagine the kind of things that people do to run trains, right? Make sure they get where they're going and that they're scheduled correctly and that they're driven in the right way and so on. So he was doing a job like that. And eventually he just got interested in apps. He didn't have any special skill. He hadn't had a computer science degree. He didn't have any of those things, but he just said, I got this phone here, this phone I got is really amazing, and it can do so many exciting things. This is when apps were new and smartphones were just coming in and so on. And he said, I'm going to learn about apps. I just think that would be really interesting. So the characteristic here, by the way, is curiosity. This person's just insatiably curious, as you'll see through the rest of the story. And this person had a long train journey. He had to go from one part of the country to another. And of course, he got on a train because he works for the train company. So that's a good way to get there to do his job. And he said, during this train journey, I'm going to learn to write apps. And he sat down with a tutorial and he played with it and he had his laptop and he did all his stuff. And he got an app out. And actually, he made an app that was really useful in his job. It was really useful to the people he worked with. And he got to the other end and he said, hey, look at this app I made. And they said, oh my God, can I have that? That would solve my problem. It would do this for me. It would do that for me. I love it. It got all around the National Rail network. And suddenly everybody was using his app. Eventually, the National Rail management got wind of this, and they were smart. They said, hey, we have a curious person here who's been very interested in this area, and so interested they built something very useful. We're going to capitalize on that. And they were very smart because they made him the head of apps for National Rail, even though he had no background in this at all. But he obviously knew how to build apps. So he made a bunch of these. He got people using much better systems and services, and it was easy to carry the phone on the train. You didn't have to lug around a big laptop and everything. So it was a very significant win for him. Then the story's not over. You would think maybe that's enough. It would be enough for most people. This guy then went and got a job with one of my clients. This is how I know him. And he got a job as a product manager in financial services. I do a lot of things other than financial services. Just seems to be my stories so far have been about that. In this financial services company, he came in as the head of product. Now, he didn't know anything about financial services, just like he didn't know anything about apps. But he'd been so curious and so interested, and he really impressed them with his ability to understand customers and capture their ideas. And the story was really inspiring that he was able to tell. And they said, look, we're going to take a bet on this guy. Doesn't have the experience that we're expecting, but we see that curiosity. We see that ability to learn very fast. And boy, did it pay off for them. Very, very successful. They had an exit a few years ago, which was very, very good. He was a big part of that. Very, very successful person. Guess what? He's now at a major software company that you will have heard of, one of the big ones that span the globe. And I think he's taking a sabbatical. I'm not quite sure. But he's doing amazing stuff for them. And he's not allowed to tell me about it because it's all so secret. So I don't know what it is, but he's taking over the world. And he started as an individual contributor within the rail system and parlayed that and his curiosity into a very significant career, which was very, very successful. Now, I'm not telling you these stories simply to inspire you. If you're on the side where you're like, hey, how can I do that? What could I do? You might not be a very curious person. That just might not be in your nature. And I wouldn't encourage you necessarily to try to make yourself curious. I don't know a way to do that, to be as curious as this person. I mean, this person is scoring 1,000 on a scale from 1 to 10 on level of curiosity, right? You might not be like that. But if you can encourage yourself to be more curious, if you can encourage yourself to be more humble, more capable of asking dumb questions and learning from them very fast, you're likely to advance more quickly for sure. And if somebody is listening who's at the executive level, who's looking for someone like that, if they're paying attention to me at least, or they're paying attention to similar stories they may have encountered, they might hunt you out and find you to bring you up. And you could certainly make that more evident. If you want to ask more about that, feel free to. Right, now I'm going to turn to some of the questions people have been asking. So let me go to those. I have them on a separate screen over here, so I just have to jump over to that. So thanks for your questions. I really appreciate them. I'm going to make sure to try to cover as many of them as I can. Now, this is one in a completely different direction. Lynn asks, what's your advice on helping someone who doesn't see how some of their behaviors are making them not ready for a promotion, even after it's been explained to them? Okay, so this is a person who's not ready. This is a person who's kind of stuck being a junior, and they're not performing. Now, that's not our main topic today, but I love answering these questions. So let me do my best with that one. The main thing you do is fire them. And I hate to be that blunt with you, Lynn, but if you have someone who has heard feedback and is not responsive to it, they're unlikely to become responsive. If I had a pill that I could give people and it would make them responsive to feedback, I would be a very rich consultant who would charge a lot for those pills. Unfortunately, I don't have it and nobody does. If a person is impervious to feedback that's clear and simple and comprehensible, you can check, have I been giving good feedback? You can check that with a coach. You can check that with other folks who are performing in the organization. If I gave you this feedback, would you understand it? What would you do? What would I see different in your behavior? If they're able to understand the feedback you've given this person, and it sounds like you've given it to them repeatedly, this person is not performing. This person is not interested or not capable or, secretly working for a competitor. I don't know what's going on. But someone like that, I don't think I would expect that you can rescue. I certainly would not expect that they would be able to suddenly realize where their behaviors are not working when you have already pointed it out to them. I'm assuming that part. Lynn, you might have challenges or difficulties in making that clear and explaining it to the person. And if you have that kind of challenge, get some coaching and help. It's the sort of thing you can ask about on the forum. You can ask me, get some help with that to be sure you're communicating clearly. But if you're communicating clearly, they're not responsive, they're in the wrong job. So get them in a different job. Okay, tough love for Lynn there. Let's see. Joshua is on the kind of wanting to rise side, I think, because Joshua asks, how can I develop soft skills? I'm not actually sure. Maybe Joshua is asking how to develop skills in Joshua's team. I'm not quite sure. So Joshua, feel free to clarify that if you'd like now or later. But I'll try to answer it as I understand it, which is how can I, Joshua, improve my soft skills? Now, we're going to identify more characteristics here, but we've already identified curiosity, high performance, just being a very good person, appearing in the blind audition, and humility. Two of those are soft skills. One of them is a hard skill. Just be good at whatever it is that you do, in the same way that an opera singer might be a fantastic opera singer, able to hit a high, F or whatever it is. I don't know what's the criterion for opera singers. But the other two are soft skills. Those are things that are not directly influencing your performance, but they indirectly influence your effectiveness. And the best way I know to improve those, well, a couple different ways. One is coaching. So I do a lot of that. I just finished, I'm going to write probably this week in my weekly email about a person I coached for 2 weeks. And this person made a huge turnaround. Now, they worked very hard, but we needed to improve some soft skills for this person, chiefly curiosity, actually, and with help from me and guidance. And, he read my book and really tried a lot of the exercises and worked through the analyses of the conversations and so on. And he really turned himself around. I give him tons of credit. I was the catalyst, but it was really great success to see that person turn it around that quickly. I was really, really proud of him. And I've seen several other examples of that recently as well. I kind of feel like I'm at another breakthrough point. I've got my coaching shorter and shorter over time. It started as it might take a year or more to get somebody where I need to. Now it's often 2 to 3 months. Now I've done a 2 weeks and a 6-week one. So there's real significant improvement you can do very quickly if you work hard at it. And of course, you don't necessarily need to hire a coach like me. I'd love it if you did, but there are lots of other ways you could pay very close attention in the forum. You could ask lots of searching and difficult questions of people like me and others who are in the community and elsewhere. You can practice these techniques. You can read books. Agile Conversations is, of course, mine, but there are loads of others on developing these kinds of skills, improving your conversations. But I think that self-study and application, if you're going to be one of these people who makes a big leap, and you see that the gap is soft skills, first thing, good self-awareness. That's another very good characteristic to look out for. And so self-awareness is important. You recognize you lack these things. And then it's like learning anything else. If you want to learn to play the piano, so you can play with the New York Met or something, you're going to need to play the piano an awful lot and screw it up and play wrong notes. And if you can practice quickly and get around the loop of experiment, feedback, more experiments, go around that loop very, very fast, then I wouldn't be surprised if you could improve your soft skills very, very quickly, probably faster than you think you could. So I think that was Joshua that's Joshua who was asking. So Joshua, I hope that's helpful. And I'll take one more. This is from Nanette. Hi, Nanette. Nice to see you here. Nanette asks, what are indicators that a person is ready or willing for more responsibility? Now, that's quite a tricky one. I'm really glad Nanette asked that one. Nanette always asks really, really tough questions because of, I think, where Nanette sits in her organization. She gets to see all kinds of interesting stuff. So, Nanette, I really like that question. The thing I would say is the obvious ones are probably not who you want to look for. And that's why I told the story of the quite humble 13-year-old. He wasn't going around banging on doors saying, I'm 13, I'm going to take over the world, I'm going to be the next Steve Jobs, you should hire me. He wasn't really a self-promoter, but he promoted himself by just being brilliant, right? Anybody who met him would. I remember he came up one day and he said, did you know that I hold the record for memorizing the most digits of pi, 3.1415, the number that governs the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter. He said, I've memorized thousands of digits. I have the world record for this, or the record in Britain. I forget what it was. Now, you meet a 10-year-old kid or something, whatever he was when he told me this, and he tells you something like this. You think, man, this is just an incredible young man. He might be kind of nuts. Why is he doing that instead of getting good at cricket or something? But boy, it's certainly an unusual person and the kind of thing that sticks in your mind. So, Nanette, what I might look for is not necessarily the person who is banging on your door saying, hey, can I get a promotion? Not the kind of person who's always first to volunteer to say, look at my amazing success. I got more commission than anybody else on the sales team or something like that. I'd look for the humble person whose skills and whose abilities are shining through even despite their humility, because that person's actually going to weather the storm quite a lot better. That would be the first thing I would look for. The second thing is their reputation with others. Now, I didn't plan to talk about that as much, so I don't think I have a great story for it. But please ask me more if you'd like to hear more about that, because what you're going to find is that the people who are natural leaders, the ones who are kind of ready for this, as you put it, ready for a bigger responsibility, and who are really going to outperform others, they're naturally doing it anyway. They kind of attract followers. So this might be somebody who has folks join with them for lunch for a study group. And, they might be in customer service and they're getting together a group at lunch to study better ways to track tickets or to understand the software they're maintaining in a better way. I've seen that kind of thing. And that person just tends to have people gravitate around them, not by force. They're not the kind of person who says, you're going to come with me, forget your lunch, come with me, and we're going to learn this. They're the sort of person who says, I'm studying this. Would anybody like to join me? I have some extra pizza. And people naturally gravitate to them. So I'd look for those characteristics, somebody whose performance is high, but is quite humble about it, and you might have to go and dig it out, but also attracts followers, and you see it naturally emerging. Those are two signals that I've seen, and I'd love for anybody else to comment as well. Let's see. There's one other story that I wanted to tell, and I have the feeling that I have another one that I can't think of right now. Yes, I do know that story. Maybe I'll finish with that story. But let me tell you the story of a person with a different characteristic. So what this person was willing and able to do better than most folks I've ever seen is to do hard emotional work. And I was coaching this person, and she was a leader in a technical team. Now, if I tell you that there's a person who has the pronoun she in a technical team, that already shows you that that's a person who's bucking a trend, right? It's very unfortunate. It's not fair. It's not how things should be. It has nothing to do with gender, whether you're good at programming or not, but it is a male-dominated profession unfairly. And so she had a small leadership position within a quite large organization, and she was really effective. And I dug into why she was effective and why the CEO had noticed this, had started to pick up some of these signals that we've been talking about, and said, hey, Squirrel, you should coach this person. I think this person's going to go far. And boy, was he right, as you'll see. And so I began working with her, and I saw how vulnerable she was willing to be, how open she was to feedback. She would act on feedback right away. I'd give her some homework. She'd act on it. Take action, even though it was painful and difficult and self-searching, and really caused her to deal with emotions and challenges that she didn't feel ready for, but actually was. And that willingness to do difficult emotional work was wonderful foundation for her learning very, very quickly to be a senior leader. She became the CTO, and so this was from quite a low level. She was a middle rank manager within a large organization, not anything special that you would have looked at and said, this is a future CTO. And this was, I think, either her first or her second management job. So it wasn't like she was deeply experienced in this area, but she just kept rising. And the CEO could see her performance. That was the blind audition part. There were objective measures of how her team was outperforming. She was very popular with her team, but not only popular, but also got the best out of them. She was willing to, with her hard emotional work, to give very clear feedback, to help them to understand how to improve, to bring out the best of them, fire the ones who weren't able to perform, as I was telling someone before. And she just performed really, really well, thanks to difficult emotional work. And because she dealt with those issues, she figured out how to lead in more effective ways that were vulnerable for herself and also encouraged vulnerability and learning in her team. She became the CTO of that company, and now has moved on to greener pastures where she's leading an even larger team and doing even more. So tremendous victory, tremendous success for this person. And it was all down to this willingness to do hard emotional work. Again, not the kind of thing that you would naturally pick out. I'm so impressed by that CEO that he was able to look down in his organization and say, oh, this person right here, this person is a future great leader. And boy, was he right. I expect, although I don't know this, that he was using these same kinds of signals that we talked about, where he could look and see that she had humility, definitely very humble person, not a self-trumpeter, not a person who boasts and brags, but actually performs. He could see that her team was getting great results, and that she had this willingness to learn, willingness to do difficult emotional work. So that's another signal, I think, that's very valuable. Difficult to find, but you can test it with a little bit of coaching, for example. You can test it by giving some feedback and saying, I think you might be ignoring some of the people who are failing on your team. You should confront them and fire the ones who are bad, who don't respond. That would be a kind of test that you could give someone to see, are they ready for more responsibility? And as I said before, a good trick is to say, can you do your boss's job for a bit? And I can't remember, I don't think she actually did that, but she certainly could have. She would have passed that test with flying colors. Okay. Now I'd love more questions. I really enjoyed the ones that I just went through. If anybody has any more, this would be the time to throw them in, because we're coming down toward the end. I want to tell one more story that I think is also inspiring and gives you some impression what people can do and how they can move very quickly in organizations. But I do want to solicit more questions. So if you have any, please put them in the chat, the comments, whatever platform you're using. I can see all of those, and I would love to answer more questions for you. Got to make sure I can still breathe, and I'm not coughing all over you. So thanks for waiting while I have a drink. Okay, so let me tell you this final story, and this is one again about someone who turned up very, very young. Youth and inexperience, by the way, are not the same thing. There's certainly some very young people who are super experienced. That 13-year-old had been writing code for many years. And there are certainly some older people who also have these characteristics. So the fact that I'm telling stories about relatively young people is simply because there are more of them who are inexperienced, who might be at the junior level, but be ready to go to senior. There's not a necessary connection. This person happens to be quite young. Not as young as the 13-year-old, but I remember at my very first CTO role, one of the investors came to us. We had very early stage investors, angel investors. And one of them came along, he was on the board, and he said, look, Squirrel, I got this kid, and he's my stepson. And I said, oh boy, this is not going to end well. I don't know what we're going to do with this, but boy, I don't like where this is going. And he said, he's kind of underfoot here in the summer. And what I'd really like you to do is just, pay him something. I don't care. He probably worked for free. Can you just get him out of the house because he's bored? And he seems to know something about this thing called Linux. And I've heard you talk about that. Can you do something with him? And I said, oh boy, here we go. Linux is an operating system like the Mac operating system or the Windows operating system. And we happen to use it a lot. And I said, well, we really do need people who know Linux. That would be really, really helpful. I don't know if this high school kid is really going to be ready for that. This is years before I met the 13-year-old. Now I'm more attuned to this, right? I'm looking out for kids. If anybody knows a bored kid, please tell me. I'd love to hook them up with some of my clients who really need brilliant coders. Or brilliant anything if they're interested, if they're entrepreneurial. There are lots of opportunities for folks like that. I didn't know that at the time. So I'm dreading meeting this young man. And I'm thinking, how am I going to let the board person down? I mean, there's no way he knows what to do. So I handed him a computer when he turned up. I said, I hear you know Linux. Would you install it here and get it ready for this and that and the other and install these things and so on? I thought I wasn't going to, he'd probably just go home and give up, or, he'd come back with something half done. He was back in half an hour. I'd expected he'd take the whole day. He's back in half an hour. He's installed the whole thing. He's added more stuff than I knew about. He's done this absolutely brilliant job and documented the whole thing. So I said, my God, okay, I think we can make use of you. I went to my boss and he laughed at me for a while and then said, okay, fine. Let's give this kid a summer trial. He's still at the same company 20 years later. And he's there because he's been such a brilliant, effective guy. He never went to university, didn't have to. He had taught himself everything he needed, and he taught himself a ton more under us because I kept giving him more and more challenging things to do, and he was more and more willing to do it. Now, what characteristic might I pull out? First of all, there was a blind audition there. I really didn't pay much attention to what he looked like. I just wanted to know, could he install Linux? Oh my God, could he? Right? So he was a tremendous contributor that way. Humble, he hadn't come banging on the door. His stepfather had said, can you get him out of my way? That was our original start. And he was willing to do hard work, including emotional work, and deal with some issues that made him hard to manage because, of course, he'd never worked in a company before. So those were all good characteristics. I'd say the other thing that really stood out about him was how much self-learning he did. He needed almost no direction. And he was spending a lot of time doing this kind of work and learning and coming up with things on his own. Because, of course, he was bored at school, bored to tears. And I don't even know if he performed well in school. He's the sort of person that probably wouldn't have. He wouldn't have studied for the exam because he already knew all the answers. He was that kind of kid. And the other person that I'll point to, I just thought of one other person that I know in my network, also in the community. And he has a job inside a company that does security work, and he's suddenly become an AI expert. Now, how do you go from one to the other? So I'm saying these two people are quite similar in that they're in one environment, which encourages a certain type of behavior, passing exams, doing security tests and so on. And they've learned about a completely different thing. And if you see that kind of cross-domain curiosity and interest, that's a very, very good sign, because that's the sort of person who can take on a lot more responsibility in the face of opposition, in the face of not knowing about it, in the face of not being an expert. And that's a wonderful thing to be able to do. Okay, so I hope these are some kind of inspiring stories for you. I don't want anyone to walk away saying, you have to be this kind of genius, you have to be a Mozart, you have to be a Stephen Hawking to be able to do this. No, I think these kinds of characteristics, this kind of jump from junior to senior, is something we could do a lot more of. And we leave a lot of capability on the table by asking people simply to do what they currently do and not challenging them with doing something really different when they have a few of these characteristics. They perform very well on blind auditions. They're humble. They're very curious. They do hard emotional work, and they're learning about something that is not what they're assigned. So if you see people like that, or if you start moving in that direction, I'd be very interested in it. And I'd love for you to comment in the Squirrel Squadron forum or drop me a line, send me an email, pick up the phone. My number is on douglassquirrel.com. I'm always interested in more stories like this, not just to inspire people, but also to encourage them to look for these kinds of characteristics, either in their organization or in themselves. Well, I hope this was helpful to you. I had a blast talking about it. I'm going to stop here, but I'd love more questions. You can post them on the forum, send them to me. If you have interests or ideas, or you disagree with me and you say, no, this isn't possible, this isn't something that we can do, or I don't think it would work in my organization, I'd love to debate that with you. Please get in touch. We'll be back again in 2 weeks. We're off next week, but in 2 weeks, we're doing one on how to hire for the C-suite. So it'll be very similar to this, but at a higher level. And certainly would love to see you there. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thanks so much for coming. Take care. Bye now.